Hello there. This is Minakshi Coach, and today our talk is on early intervention in autism spectrum disorder. How do we first, to start with, how do we define autism? We find lots of links that describe autism, and some links also get us to worry a lot. Yes, it is a neurodevelopmental disorder and it is characterized by challenges in social behavior communication. Sometimes child can be nonverbal and there could be repetitive behavior in the child, and there can be a lot of additional difficulties that come with and we discover with the child. So autism, when we say, we think of this term, how does it how does it make a typical child different uh, from an atypical child? How does autism affect a child or an individual, and how can we make it better for the individual or for the child? Well, one most important thing which we have noticed, myself as a parent and as a professional, is that there has to be intervention. And when we speak about intervention, the earlier it is always better, because if we wait on, we lose the golden period when a child is, what could, if I put it as, is plastic, is moldable, and that is the main learning time for a child when they are younger. So why we need to uh, start off early, why the early intervention, and how the early intervention is something that I would want to speak about today. Next slide, please. A variety of therapies are there which has been seen to help an autistic child, which helps for them to develop better and make it easier for them going forward, forward going to school, and increasing their chances of being more successful. So when we keep waiting for a formal diagnosis, sometimes autism as in have got different levels of needs. Sometimes when you see a child, they would be having more challenges or lesser challenges, and as we know, one autistic person is very different from another. So sometimes it is very evident, easy to diagnose, but sometimes it can be pretty difficult, and that is when we lose time. So I would say, instead of losing time and waiting on, it is better that we learn about it ourselves. As parents, we can help our children better and much earlier. Next slide, please. So when we talk about typical children, what do we mostly expect? What when, as parents or individuals, as school teachers or family members or neighbors or anyone, because if I am a parent, I see, okay, my child is not developing typically, especially when it is a first child. Most parents wouldn't know that there's something different about their child. So what are the things which we typically look for in a typical child? So as they grow from 6 months to 4 years, we see that in 6 months they would respond to their name, they respond to people's emotions, copy sounds, they like to play with others. At 12 months, that's 1 year, they use simple gestures, they shake their head, say bye bye, no. They use words like mama, dada, or they say oh. They understand that expression. By 18 months, they play simple pretend plays like feeding a doll or pointing to something that's interesting. They like to hand things to their parents or some or a carer or a caregiver and say, we say, they gesture that come play with me, or if it rolls away from them, if the ball rolls away from them, they would typically point and show to the persons, indicating that okay, bring it back. At 24 months, that's 2 years again, says sentences with 2 to 4 words. They follow instructions, obviously gets very excited seeing other children, would like to share things, show things. At 36 months, they show affection for friends without prompting. They like to go to certain settings. Of course, they wouldn't, all children, they don't like to get separated from their parents, but eventually they get used to a setting, they like to share their things, and eventually you will see they adjust in that setup and they start liking it. They like the school, they like to do new things, play with their peers. At 48 months, we see there is a growth in their sentences. They start communicating, they start making stories, they try to tell you stories, and would would not like seclusion. They would like to be amongst other children and people. So these are the typical things that we observe in a typical child. So next slide please. If sometimes it happens, we go to someone like our friends, and we like to tell them that, we like to share if we are at a doubt, and we say, my child is not doing so and so, should I be worried? Some very well meaning family members, friends, and even professionals at times would say something like, oh, the child could be shy. As I said, there are different levels at which it affects children. So sometimes it can be that someone is not really showing the typical symptoms, and cannot be picked very easily on the spectrum. So when we talk about shy temperament, how is it different from ASD? Now, when a child is shy, they will be quiet and withdrawn. Say it's a new school, new setting, new people, new place, okay. But if it is ASD, there will be a complete lack of spontaneous seeking to share the enjoyment. There won't be any interest, they won't show, there'll be a lack of interest or achievement with others. They wouldn't want to mingle that easily. uh, they are slow. If it is a shy temperament, they will be slow to develop friends and play with others. But if it is ASD, there'll be a failure to develop peer relationships appropriate to developmental level, even with the closest peers. Even if they have been with certain friends for quite some time, if are being growing up with the same people or cousins, for example, sometimes you will see that there is a lack of interest. They do not get into the play. In shy temperament, again, the child, if a child is just shy, they would tend to look away or look down. That's common. But if it is ASD, there will be marked impairments to use the eye to eye gaze, even with family members or friends, people visiting them on a day to day basis. It takes a long time to become comfortable in group settings for shy people, but shy children. But in ASD, there will be a lack of emotional connection or as we say, they wouldn't really be comfortable in the social setting. Go even It's not about there's not a time factor. Like if you're shy, you're taking some time, but eventually you open up, but that will be completely lacking. So they would really not understand the back and forth of a communication. Next slide please. So what are now that we know what a typical child displays, we need to know what are the red flags that that actually indicate towards ASD, and what parents should actually look out for. So there will be an impairment in social interaction. that is the inappropriate gaze, lack of warm, joyful expressions, lack of sharing interest, lack of response to contextual cues, lack of response to the name, lack of coordination of nonverbal communication. So expressions like oh, oh, lack of you call their name, the child is doing something, you say, Harry, come here. Harry, can you look at this? Harry. So there won't be any response from the child because they will not be, they do not understand that that is their name and they are, that is how people are addressing them, or they are actually trying to communicate with them. There'll be impairment in communication, lack of showing, lack of pointing. When there is a lack of communication, as we say, sometimes children do, verbal kids, they do have words. So what is the difference between words and communication? Talking, basically, if I am either just asking about things that I want or I need, and I use single words, say biscuit, milk, sleep, bed, brush, toilet. So I am making someone know my needs, but that communication is missing. If someone wants asks me, how are you today, I would definitely, I would have no clue what does that mean. I wouldn't be able to reply to that, or have a common communication conversation with the person, because I wouldn't understand that. There's a lack of communicative consonance, using person's hand as a tool. Most of the time, because if an autistic child needs something, they would probably just hold the hand, take, and try to indicate that I need something like this, I need this, or I'm liking this. But making a request, or making, using words for that, or liking something and being able to say yes, I liked it, will not be there. Repetitive behaviors and restricted interest. So sometimes we see that children line up objects, they take a car, instead of enjoying with the whole car, they would be like very focused on the wheels, and they would just like to rotate that. It would be maybe just a sensory exploration, or an excessive interest in certain particular toys or games, even if it is just spinning something and going on spinning that, or just looking at something very closely, just enjoying the color. Emotional regulation, distress over removing objects. When we say emotional regulation, actually should be dysregulation. It is they. We see that ASD children, because of their lack of being able to communicate their needs, they do get frustrated a lot. And even if there are very small changes made to their routine or to their interest, they like something that they are doing, they're enjoying, and you just take it away, they could really find it difficult to accept. And it is so it gets so difficult that there would be a meltdown. Next slide, please. So what is the difference? I wouldn't say as I'm just putting it as temper tantrums for the understanding, but children with ASD will normally do not have, are not showing tantrums, but they are having a meltdown, something which they cannot control. It could be a sensory need, it could be because they are having an episode, because they are not being able to communicate, they are getting very frustrated, and certain needs which they are unable to express, like uh, the child. So how do we know that this is not a regular thing, not just a temper tantrum, but a meltdown that is happening and actually bothering an ASD child? So when parents are looking for, when parents are trying to figure out between temper tantrum and a meltdown, so a child has more than 10 to 20 discrete temper tantrums on separate days, for at home during a 30-day period. Child has more than 5 tantrums on a day on multiple days. at school or outside of home. Tantrums regularly last longer than 25 minutes on average. During tantrum, child will consistently show aggression. It would be hitting, kicking, biting, spitting, or throwing things directly on a caregiver. Child attempts to hurt themselves. There will be a lot of self-harming as well, like head banging, scratching, hitting themselves. Tantrums are accompanied by other atypical behaviors, such as self-stimulating behaviors that may not be injurious at times, but they could also be atypical social responses or aspects of mood. So there are sometimes some self-stimulating behaviors also. We could see that some children would just keep biting their nails. That's a way of coping. They try to cope that. They would just keep moving back and forth or moving their head side by side. So there will be certain behaviors that they would try to self stimulate themselves. Tantrums seem exaggerated. Sometimes we feel a child has a strong reaction to seemingly minor events. It will seem like they were just taking a walk. They are taking a walk in the park, is going on smoothly, and suddenly the child just breaks down and has a meltdown, and you would think, what's happened? Nothing should have triggered this. But this is not just a temper tantrum. There's obviously the child has been probably um, piling up a lot within themselves. Maybe they are exhausted, they cannot walk anymore, or maybe they are sensory things that are bothering them. Maybe loud noises, maybe lights, maybe the touch, maybe the weather. There could be many things. Like a very simple example, there could be a situation when a child um, is sensitive to touch and does not like the feeling of the socks. So a simple thing is to wear it inside out so it doesn't touch the skin anymore. Sometimes our children can get bothered just by the labels and on their clothing, so we just cut that and you can see a dramatic change. So very simple things can trigger these, and these are really not something that they intend to, but it happens because they are not being able to uh, control themselves anymore, and because it's really bothering them. So it's not necessary that any of these points can say that yes, the child is ASD or anything, but it is always helpful to get the child to be seen by a pediatrician. It is good to get advice. It is good to do it as soon as possible, because diagnosis anyway take a long time. Instead of waiting and wondering, I think the better thing to do is to seek professional help. Next slide, please. So when I talk about early intervention, what does it actually mean? So if I start observing a child having a typical growth, as in is not meeting the milestones, is not responding to the name, not giving me eye contact, is very rigid, is repetitive, is likes seclusion, likes to be alone, doesn't like to communicate, doesn't like to socialize. So I should think about an early intervention. Early intervention would mean that as soon as I have a doubt, as soon as I build on the doubt, I think, okay, this could be a problem. So I start getting help. There are several therapies that are there which can help the child. Next slide, please. So if we talk about the advantages, if we say why early intervention, what would be the harm if we wait? So as we say, the child is, when they are younger, they are at the moldable face. We can teach them better. We can do it in an easier way, even with the size of a child. As they grow older, it becomes much more difficult. They become stronger, they become difficult, a little more difficult to handle. If we can, when they are younger, they are smaller, and also they are developing, even in their brains they are developing, and they can learn much more language, they can learn so many life skills, and there's a lot more flexibility as when they are younger, they are little. So there has been a lot of studies, and there's evidence on how early intervention has helped. So there is a study which suggests that 14% of the autistic children who undergo 2 intensive years of a program called the Early Start Denver model will improve radically. Another program called LEAP appears to have similar outcomes. There is evidence that the programs can change the way the brain functions. One study called the Infant Start showed it was between for 6 to 7 children at the age between 6 months, as early as 6 months, to 15 months. And they, in that, out of those 7 children, they really improved dramatically. We can start work on strategies to improve the behavior, and we can stop temper tantrums. Like it before we get to a stage when the child is getting frustrated and is no longer able to take it anymore. Even before getting there, it is always better we learn about it and we help them. We do not have to get to that stage where the child is unable to express their needs, and we put strategies where we can actually help them much earlier. Talking and discussion, when we talk about early intervention, we are meeting therapists or we are meeting some professionals. We are actually, when we discuss about our child, the professionals will also come to know about what are the strong points, or what are the interests of the child, what is the child doing. It's like studying a child. When we play with someone, when we play with a kid and we put certain options, when we see, okay, this child is interested in colors, so we can use that as for teaching them further or as a strategy. And then we can structure everything around that, something that is an advantage to the child already likes. So it's a motivation. Significant gains seen in IQ, communication, and social interact. Yes, when there is early intervention, it will obviously improve the IQ, communication, and the social interaction, because we are exposing the child to this at a much earlier stage. We are not waiting for it. So as they keep going, with time, with age, they get better at that. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the Early Start Denver model, now there is nothing there in the Denver model. When we talk about therapies, we are not talking about we are only talking about play strategies. A 1:1 strategy, where we are focusing on the interests of the child and trying to motivate the child, and making it easier for the child. If there is a speech delay, if some parents come to me, they say, no, the child is not holding the pencil, they don't write. Well, it's not like they don't want to, but because their fine motor skills have not developed. So they say the child is not throwing a ball or catching the ball or not interested in playing with me. That's because their gross motor skills have not developed. So when we have these therapies, the play therapies, we actually very slowly add the child's interest and the and strategies which are completely harmless. We use these for the child to learn, which will in future help them to gain life skills, will help them learn better. It help them develop their speech, will help them to communicate. So that is why we use these strategies. Now the early stage Denver model basically works on ABA, which is the applied behavioral analysis. So parents and therapists use the play to build a positive and fun relationships. It is based on understanding of normal toddler learning and development, focused on building positive relationships. Teaching occurs during natural play and everyday activities. Next slide, please. So who can provide this? If you are even at home, parents can, they can see, they learn, and they can do it with their children. It's not like the parents cannot do it. Parents can do it, they can learn, and they are the first therapists, I would say, who should know about how to engage their children. When we say early start Denver model, there will be therapists who will be trained, psychologists, behavioral specialists, occupational therapists, speech and language pathologists, early intervention specialists, and developmental pediatricians. But all again, as I said, we use therapies that we professionals help the children. Professionals give you tips, they tell you how to do it. They'll even if it is small bits, they would teach you how to what to do when you are at the home setting, because a child spends maximum time with their parents in the house. So even if I have a child doing 2 hours in a therapy in a therapy center, the parent will still have to incorporate it in the rest of the day, showing how how to engage the child, for a simple thing like when you are giving the child a bath, saying simple words, simple using simple words like rubber duck, water, splash, simple words. For food, for simple things like food, you keep it in a box. Don't give it immediately. Say you show the box, wait till the child responds, at least hits on the box or points to the box. You say, take it out, and you say, oh, you want biscuit, and then you shut it. And then next time, next time maybe, or sometime, the child will definitely point and say biscuit. So we have to incorporate it in the whole day. Next slide, please. This is a video I would want to share. It's a wonderful video. I would want you to see this, because this is a very positive thing and something that uh, something that will tell us how positive it is when we really work with our children. So this is a child who was unable to communicate, is nonverbal, was brought to the foster parents in the at the age of 1.5 years, would keep crying, was unable to express, and was really had gone through a lot of trauma. And it was really breaking the mom's heart, because It's not easy to see a child struggling like that. But they they try to find out that besides everything, every the trauma and everything which the child has faced, there is something more to the child. There is something that is bothering the child. And that is when they found out that okay, the child could be in the spectrum. So some children need 1:1, and some children need 2:1. If there are bigger challenges, if there are bigger behavioral challenges, then there could be two therapists with the child. Sometimes there would be one who would be a support worker. So along with other therapies, they would also be they would it sometimes in the whole day it would just be maybe 5 minutes that you get a child to do something, but those 5 minutes are golden because in the 5 minutes they are giving the 100% and they are definitely learning something and building a life skill. As you can see, a child who was crying or was unable to express themselves have actually are actually learning, trying to communicate, enjoying. And yeah, thriving. Next slide, please. And when you see a child as happy, a child that's thriving because of early intervention, there is absolutely nothing that's more worth than that. Now to intensive interaction. Now, what is intensive interaction? So, um, uh, yes, there was no sound. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. Yes, so intensive interaction is to enjoy being with another person, to develop the ability to attend to that person, to develop the young person's ability to initiate communication, to learn to do sequences of activity with the other person, take turns in exchanges of behavior, to share personal space, understand and use eye contact. So these are some things that we expect to happen after intensive interaction. Intensive interaction can be as simple as you get down at the child's level, as in at the same eye level, or you cuddle them or you tickle them, and you say things like, you want to have some more tickle, do you want some more tickle? And at that time the child would actually give you some eye contact, and if they like it, they might indicate, they might hold your hand, put them in the body and show, yes, more, like tickle me kinds. And it can be, it has to be a child led sometimes, like a child is just lining up objects. Say nothing, do nothing, just place something near that, or just enjoy, just keep looking at that, and maybe they are making some blocks, or maybe you make some blocks and they just throw it. That is also interaction, that is also um, exchange of communication, that is also um, being with another individual, enjoying that moment, and the willingness of sharing that space and doing something together. Next slide, please. How can we do it? You probably do it already. Most of the parents actually do it without even being, consciously. They do it. But some of the techniques we can do are, mirror the body posture, mirror positive facial expressions like smiling, join in with noises, seek out eye contact, turn taking, and try and keep talking to a minimum. Yeah, words, instead of, in this case, less is more. Just use the minimum number of words, stay to the point, be very clear with the words, say just 3 or 4 words max, like come, let's play, let us build, crush it, yellow. Just with that, as simple as possible, as less as possible. Next slide, please. So when we talk about early intervention, what else can help? What are the things that we are talking about? One of them is your play therapy. So autism related child friendly play, because when you are teaching a typical child, they would automatically join in. But when we talk about ASD children, they will not automatically come and sit with you. So what are we supposed to do? What are the things that we can change, or what are the atypical ways in which we can engage a child is important. So they will probably concentrate on its components, like the wheels instead of a whole car. They will be very rigid. There will be less pretend play, so we have to initiate. Sometimes pretend play can be with simple things lying around the house. You can pick up a banana probably and just say hello, this is a telephone, hello. Or you can pick up a broom and you can just hopping, showing like, look, it's a horse. Or you can just pick up a plate and say, wheel, I'm driving a car. Some some things that are just around the house, nothing expensive, nothing to be purchased. Sometimes even these small things, and they are watching, they are listening. Even if they are not giving the eye contact, they're saying something on their own, they are definitely listening. Play therapy can help children develop their social and emotional abilities. Even if you use a doll and say, okay, I'm putting the baby to sleep now. Okay, the baby is hungry. Oh, let's give the baby some food. Or, oh, the baby got dirty. Let's give the baby a bath. The child is listening. Maybe they're just observing you. Maybe they aren't even observing you. They're doing some sitting and doing something on their own. Play therapy can make many different, or can be of many different forms. It can be on the flow time. Flow time is when we are supposed to be at the same eye level. If I am like this tall, I'm not even, how do I expect a child to give me that eye contact? That's not possible. Flow time is one of the best methods of playtime for children. um, Adult role models provide the mood for play. Eventually the kids take control. If your child takes part in IPGs as integrative play groups, they may begin to pretend to play more frequently over time. It will take time, it won't be overnight, it will, maybe it takes months together, but eventually you will see some difference. They would definitely copy, they'd see, they will learn. Your youngster may be able to focus on a person or a toy more effectively using the Jasper. Jasper is your joint attention, symbolic play engagement, and regulation technique. They can play with other kids more easily in their joint attention abilities as their joint abilities develop. So the Jasper program can support your kid in developing pretend play, toy play, social interaction, and developing the social skills. Next slide, please. Occupational therapy, as I said, sometimes we complain that the child is not using the fork, is not using the spoon, is not using the pen. That is mostly because they are unable to do so. We have to develop their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills, and that is what's going to stop the meltdowns and the aggression going forward, because the inability to do something really can frustrate a child. There are very simple things that we can do at home. Just rolling a ball, just throwing a ball, model it. It's not necessary the child joins in immediately. Model it. There can be small things like, to develop. If you are a what do you call, non-vegetarian, vegetarian, if you have got an egg, for example, boiled egg, you make them peel that. If you have got kidney beans, say put some kidney beans on a table, give them a cloth clip and ask them to pick up. Okay, cloth clip is too much, it's very difficult, ask them to use their fingers just to pick that. So these small things will develop the skills. It will again, it's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen eventually, and it will, and make it interesting. It has to be, it's not like, take this, do it. It's not like that. Sometimes you are just doing it, modeling it, and they look at you and they find the curiosity will make them come to you, and that is a better way of teaching children. Next slide, please. Um, Speech therapy. Okay, so most of our children, as I said, there are three levels of ASD when we classify children as per their needs. I'm not saying of abilities. Sorry if I did that, but as per needs, I would say sometimes children who are have more significant needs, maybe non-verbal, or could be having echolalia. And echolalia is not a bad thing. Yes, they repeat, they copy the words that a person is saying, but that is again a stage of learning and developing speech. So speech therapy is important because that is a way to develop the communication going forward. Next slide, please. And it can be sensory integration. Therapy for sensory integration would be because our senses, as we know, there are not 5 but 8 senses. The ASD children always either seek or avoid certain things like loud noises, certain kind of textures, some certain food. They are always hopping, jumping. Some of them you would see would be hopping a lot, would be jumping, running a lot. So all that because they are seeking proprioception. Sometimes it could be either it could just be that they're avoiding certain things. So we need to know us their sensory profile, and then after we do the integration, we can help them better. So if I am doing any kind of therapy or even play, I know that there are certain things I need to avoid and certain things which I need to desensitize in the process going forward, so that they can cope better. Medications, there are certain medications which ease the symptoms. But again, I am not a fan myself of medication. There are certain and I'm not ruling it out either. It's not for me to say. I'm not a professional on that end. But there are sometimes the children just need it. They have to do what they need. And sometimes, but in any case, when they are on medication, it has to be paired with behavioral therapy. It cannot just be medication, because what we are doing is actually helping them to learn how to cope going forward. So we don't have them on medication forever and ever. So if there's behavioral therapy and the medication, the children learn in the process. Nutrition, because some of our children are picky eaters, and even if they are not, we need to have a proper diet in place. Some of our children have got gut issues as well, and they cannot they constipation is again one of the most common things we see. And that is why we have to have a proper diet set for them. There has to be a nutritionist who can suggest a proper diet for certain children. Next slide, please. I'm just trying to make the time is I think we are running out of time. So okay, this is the last slide. Why wait? Even because our children, when early intervention, the children are smaller, we do not have any obligations of meeting a curriculum. So there is absolutely no obligations for toddlers and preschoolers. What can they can do at that stage is actually do the play therapies, do the early intervention program, and prepare them for for preschool school. 2-year-olds have got ingrained habits. It's relatively easy to stop negative behaviors as well. If we start early, we helping children learn socially acceptable behaviors. It's easier at a younger age. Early intervention is free of charge. Actually, that is something that we can also do at home. Obviously, with professional help, we can find there are many programs which are run by the state. Even if for some reason the child has not been accurately diagnosed, because there are certain things which have got similar symptoms to autism, such as selective mutism, your depression, anxiety, ADHD. They share symptoms sometimes. Maybe they are not diagnosed accurately, but again, it doesn't harm. These therapies are only play based. They can only be to frame a better behavior or learn life skills. They do not harm in any way. Next slide, please. This is my book, Star Autism Moms. It is there on Amazon. It is there on Norton Press in India. It's cost is somewhere near 350 rupees. If you want to learn more about early intervention, then this could help you. Next slide, please. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Are there any questions for me? Okay, so you can get in touch with me in any case. If you have any questions, you can send me on this chat or the recording, which I'm sure Autism Connect is going to have. I thank Autism Connect for this wonderful opportunity and this time with the lovely people. Thank you so much. Mona Tedwal has asked, what are the common comorbidities an autistic child can have? Yes, there are comorbidities with autism. We have seen that with diagnosis with autism, there are several of them. Like a child can have sensory processing disorder. They can have ADHD. Some of our kids also have Fragile X syndrome. They have um, Yes, one child I have seen cerebral palsy as well. So autism does come with comorbidities. Any other question? Thank you so much. Thank you, Costa, for your time.